All right, I'd like to call the meeting together for the Board of Selectmen at 7:14 p.m. Could I have a roll call, please?
Joe Shank present.
Chad Sexton Duranian present.
And Veronica Kell present. Would the Finance Committee like to call your meeting to order?
The Finance Committee cannot call a meeting to order at this point. We don't have a quorum, but we would be here to answer. Okay, thank you. No, I think it's on. So, Finance Committee does not have a quorum right here, so we're here to answer questions. Still can't. Sorry. The Finance Committee does not have a quorum, so we will be here to answer any questions that are posed to us, but we will not call a meeting to order for the Finance Committee.
Okay. All right. Please join me for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to announce that the meeting is being tape recorded. I guess can you all hear me okay? And it will be also posted on Zoom, and it's live on Channel 9. Our purpose today is to review the annual town meeting warrant and to answer any questions you may have. So I'd like to just welcome everybody for coming this evening. I'd like to introduce our interim town administrator, Ross Perry, Joe Shank, who is in his last days, minutes, hours of being a selectman, Chad Sexton Duranian, our clerk, and I'm Veronica Kell. For the Finance Committee,
To my left is Mark Hussey, newest member of the Finance Committee. To my right is Geraldine Bezikas. I am Don Hayes, Finance Committee Chairperson. Not able to join us tonight were Sam Grant, Jean Dilda, and Andrea Wood.
all right, what we'd like to do first, our agenda for tonight is the Board of Selectmen is just going to make very brief comments, after which the Finance Committee will also make comments, and then we're going to jump into the budget articles. I'm assuming everybody got a copy of them. I think they're back on that chair. And we're also going to be projecting up here, and I'm going to try to share at home so that people at home can see what we're looking at the same time. So with that said, I guess all of you know that there is an override question on the ballot. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that and about our budget and our process. The departments were asked to submit a budget for what they needed. And you can see in the budget book that there's nothing really crazy or outlandish there. The highway superintendent wanted about twice the admin hours. The facilities department, we've added 5 admin hours. We have added to accounting more hours there for the clerk in the accounting office, and full-time for the assistants and the clerk in the treasurer's office. We've also added a few hours, administrative hours and agent hours in the land use office. So those are things that we feel we need. We've also and this is by contract for those who are in the union, we are looking at a 3% pay increase for this year, a 1% bump in the overall compensation plan, and then a 2% step, and that's what gives you the 3%. What we didn't put in the budget was TEMA had requested stipends for the assistants. We didn't put, the pavement management plan is not funded. Both the library and the senior center, and they have worked very hard during COVID. They're frankly tired. They both would like assistant directors. We did not fund that for this fiscal year, though we would like to fund that in the future. We also don't have the Community Preservation Act in here, which would help us with funding for the old library and the central fire station, just for starters. So although we're asking for an override, this budget is one that we felt would best serve the town to continue moving forward. And, I guess there were a few other things that we didn't put in. A stormwater surcharge. We're required to have a town stormwater plan, which we haven't. I mean, we've had it in place, but we haven't really implemented it because we haven't had the funds to do that. Pepperell has a surcharge on their taxes for implementing the stormwater town plan for the town. So anyway, that's the reason for the override. And I'm going to move on to Chad.
I first want to thank everybody for coming here. This was my first budget season, but not my first chance at a rodeo for a budget for a major entity that I've worked with for many years in the past. Most of my comments and decisions are really based upon fact and understanding that we as a town are the ones who voted our last budget and the budget before that and the budget before that. It's not anything that we have created here without the town knowing about it and without the town approving, despite some of the things that I've seen or I've heard from constituents. But after much study, deliberation, and debate, I'm currently looking to support the Proposition 2.5 override proposed by the board for many reasons. The town has a long-standing tradition of trying to balance the needs of government operations versus protection of the residential and commercial taxpayers. It has become apparent that our structured deficit could no longer be mitigated by short-term fixes as we have done historically. I believe we must maintain or improve our current services and programs while adapting to our current pandemic environment. To do so, this board will have to advance our initiatives and priorities in areas such as infrastructure, parks and conservation, public safety, professional development, and economic development. Being faced with a budget deficit like we are, these areas are not going to get the attention that's necessary to move the town forward without the financial support of an override. On the one hand, approval of the current school budget without changes needs a closer look. When we break down our entire budget, approximately 60% of this budget is coming from the school, and I believe we need to ask for a reduction in this allocation. The Select Board did send a letter to the school district voicing our concerns about the amount of this ask, but we have never heard a response to this date. On the other hand, acceptance of the school board ask in its entirety will force other major cuts in municipal services, which will be a hardship on all of our residents. I can see both sides of this argument and also have my own personal thoughts on the matter, but I'm only concluding one thing, and I know this is not the popular viewpoint of our citizens. Accepting an override would allow for a current balanced budget satisfying the school district, satisfying the fiscal budget, and placing the town in a much better financial position for next year's budget process. As always, I'm open to suggestions regarding how we can meet the financial need of the town, satisfying the school ask, and meeting the initiatives and priorities of the Select Board.
Thank you. Joe, any comments?
No, I just want to say this is my second budget that I've gone through, and last year was a little bit tougher to try to get where we are this year. It's been a really struggle for us. There were a lot of reasons and a lot of things that had to get paid out of town money that, you know, we had no choice in. We had to do it, so it made it very difficult to take and balance the budget. The override, I have mixed emotions on that. I think it could be done in a different way, but I would stand with the rest of the board and say it's something that we need to do. It will put the town in a better position long run. The school budget, I sat in last year and this year. When you look at the school budget, it's a huge chunk of money that we as town residents have to take and come up with. And until we can get that under control, we just got to keep moving forward and do the best we can.
Ross?
Thank you for the lights, now I can read. Veronica mentioned that we gave the department heads a very tight constraints or budget guidelines. We said salaries, hold them to 3%, which was contracted by the union negotiations, and to hold expenses at 2%. And holding expenses at 2% is tough when inflation is closer to 6%. The first roll-up of the budget that we did back in February showed an $857,000 deficit. Huge amount. But after talking to each of the departments, looking at every line item, we were able to cut items out of their budgets. We reduced the original budgets by $415,000 by looking at them line by line. And the Selectmen and Finance Committee hosted a meeting on Saturday back in March where each department came in and talked about and explained their line items. And the conclusion after that meeting was each line item was justified and appropriate and made sense. It's only when you roll everything up that you realize there's a problem. The deficit as of tonight stands at $362,000. That's a huge number, but it sort of reflects having held off on expenses previously. If you don't do it this year, you'll have more pressure to do it next year, and it'll be a bigger problem to catch up. And I think that's what Townsend is seeing, is some catch-up being put into the budgets. Veronica mentioned a few things that we're not doing because it would impact taxes. One is the Community Preservation Act. I think that is something that can save the money, the town money long-term, but it does increase your tax bill. And out of respect for the taxpayers, the board agreed that we would postpone that. Same with stormwater management and the pavement management plans. All things that the town should be doing, but decided not to do this year. The town has pretty much taxed up to its tax levy. This year, we've hit that limit, and we're faced with either a Proposition 2.5 override, transferring from stabilization, or making it what I think are drastic cuts. By passing the override, it eliminates the deficit for this year, and it provides the town with some room to finance projects and to pay for operations next year. So if you don't do it now, the pressure will be even worse next year. And I'm trying to leave Townsend in a position where this year works and it's in a good situation for next year. So I think that's it for my opening comments. When we get there, I'll be glad to answer questions.
All right. Don, do you want to, any of you want to make comments?
Just very briefly, because most of the comments that I had have already been stated as far as what we set for guidelines to the departments. But I do want to thank the Finance Committee and all the members that I mentioned already for the work that they've put in. There's been a lot of hours, a lot of meetings. As far as what we saw, the goals for the town and what we were trying to provide, thank you, was looking at water quality, providing good, safe water, the safety, the fire protection, police, communication center, the schools for the town, library, senior center, and the trash and recycling curbside pickup. Every one of those has been deemed important by the residents of the town, and so we fit them all in the budget. When we go back and look at what we did last year, we asked our vendors, like trash pickup, they had a 0% increase last year. So this year, we're paying for that a little bit. There's a little bit higher. They're at 6% coming in. So some of the things that we did last year are coming back. There was, on our insurance, they gave us a 1-month holiday, and so that would reduce it by about $70,000. Now you have to pay that back into full and our 6% increase, so insurance is a lot higher this year. So you're seeing some expenses and pieces come due because we put them off last year, and we didn't account. If we had accounted for those and had them in money, there might be something in the budget that could be moved into free cash at the end of the fiscal year this year. So we're looking at that, and as that goes, the number that we're throwing out for the $350,000 is we're expending quite a bit of the free cash that is in the budget right now. So the number would be higher if we didn't use the free cash to pay that off. So we're paying for the things this year with free cash. There'll be somewhere near $200,000 before the budgets and the reconciliation at the end of this fiscal year, and we'll see what that balance is coming probably fourth quarter of and I say fourth quarter, I mean the end of this year or into January of next year, before the auditors come in and give us the numbers in the state. So really, that's where it is. We are supporting the override, the number. We haven't talked the exact numbers. The average home at $365,000. It turns out to be about $100 on the overrides. So that's $100 on the annual basis for an average home, which divides out to an extra $25 per quarter in the tax rate, in the tax bill. Yes. I'm sure there'll be more questions as we get there, but I think I've covered everything.
All right.
Yep.
Was Dawn done? Dawn,
Sorry.
are you done?
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. All right, so what we're going to do is project the warrant on the screen up here, and I'm going to project it to those who are at home. Hopefully this works. And what we're going to do is go through, we were going to start with the 3 special town meeting articles. If you have a question on this, if you could just line up and ask questions as we go through. That's a live mic right there, right in the middle,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
All right, so there are 3 questions on the special town meeting. So just as per usual, we'll enter the town meeting and then go into special town meeting. So there are 3 articles here. They are all articles that I believe, and Ross, jump in if I say it wrong, are being supported through free cash. It's past prior bills for Unitil. We all know how that is. Article 2 is for snow and ice, and we have a really large snow and ice deficit this year. And then also for MIS bills. So those are the 3 free cash items. And because it's a special town meeting, we'll be able to immediately make use of those funds. So are there any questions on any of those 3 articles? All right. I'm going to move on then to the annual town meeting and the budget. Do people have specific questions that you would like to ask about the budget itself? Do you want to go through this one by one, or do you want to line up and do your questions? Show of hands for lining up and doing questions. All right, so let's go that way. So if someone would like to come up to the mic in the middle, we'll go there. I was looking at Articles 4 through 9 and 12 through 19. Please identify yourself and speak into the microphone.
How you doing? My name's Tom Donovan. I've lived here for 5 years. My taxes have doubled since I've moved here. I'm worried about the school, because the school's $14 million plus. They got a ton of money from the state and the federal government from COVID. We should be able to take money from them and not have to do the overrides for the towns. We should. They should be transparent, and they're not. Superintendent's not a great guy. That's why we took our kids out of the school system and put them somewhere else. So I think this is completely avoidable. And if you wanted to, you could get rid of trash pickup and have a transfer station. It probably costs $300 grand. Man, it's a couple dumpsters. You can save money. We don't need to keep spending money that we don't have. We need to buy fire trucks, police cars, dump trucks, a switch and go truck for $230,000 with a hot box, evidently.
We are buying, yes.
Yeah, that's
That
what
is
that
part of the
is.
capital plan.
Yeah. We have other things we need to get aligned. We can't just go back. You guys are taking everything but the lint out of my pockets. You think it's funny, but it's not.
No, I don't
You guys
think it's
just
funny.
said that you can't pay the Unitel bill. It's not funny.
No,
This is
it's
serious
not.
business.
We are all, I thought your lint out of the pockets
It's
was
the
a
truth,
good
though.
way to.
How much, I'd like to ask you another question. How much money has not been paid in taxes to this town? How many people cannot afford to pay their taxes?
Well, I know that we did a tax title sale last year, and that is the reason that we have the amount of free cash that
But
we
you're
do.
avoiding the money. What's the dollar amount of people who haven't been able to pay their taxes?
Can you answer that?
Yeah.
It's about $1.2 million in delinquent taxes. Yes, that is not good, but that doesn't impact the budget.
It does, because that money should be in the free fund, the general fund. It's not right. You can't go back and keep taking money out of our pockets we don't have. I get up at 4 in the morning, I drive to work, I work all day long, I get home 6, 7 o'clock at night. I can't have you guys taking all the money out of my pockets.
So let me address the budget here then. You can
This
see.
is all part of it, though. This really is.
It is.
I think at some point, I'm going to try to interject. I'm here, I'm not sure exactly why I'm here, because I think the idea I had was that people would be directing questions, you know, to the chair, or to me as the moderator, even though it's not a town meeting, and we could, you know, make sure we're not getting into some sort of uncomfortable dialogue. And I'm not saying that because I think your questions have been great. I just want to keep it on a level where we're not going to get off track,
No,
okay?
I totally get it, but you're telling me there's $1.2 million that's outstanding revenue to the town. You're going for a tax override to $300,000. You can get it out of the $1.2 million. You guys can put liens against properties and do all types of things. I understand some of the people are older and elderly, but you can work with that. But if there's people that have been delinquent for years and years, they're not going to dig themselves out of a tax bill at $6 grand a year.
All right.
You have to be realistic.
The point comes on the budget, so...
I mean,
Miss-
it's all money. I get it. People need places to live. They need places to work. But you can't keep taking all the money out of our pockets. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to address that a little more. You can see in this table, and this is item, if you have Article 5, and these are the functional segments that we'll be voting at town meeting, correct, John?
Right, right.
You can see that education is roughly 60% of our budget. And you see this 3%, and you think that's not so bad, even though it's more than 2.5. However, if you look at the remaining 40%, each of these would have to average to 1.75 in order to offset that 3%, because it's such a huge part of our budget. So it is the school budget that puts us out of whack a little bit.
Hello again. You have money. We just need to collect the money. We don't have a deficit. We're actually flush with cash. We just need to collect it.
The thing is,
Ryan, Mr. Shank has a hand up.
yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. give you a little update. When I got on board last year, that was one of the first questions I asked, because I knew about where we were. We were about $1.2 million last year behind people not paying taxes. I went to the town treasurer and I asked him, where do we go? Why aren't we getting this? His take was, why boards never push for it. Well, I asked what we've done, we did collect. We did collect approximately, I think, $500,000 or $600,000. All right, so it isn't something that we're doing to try not to do the right thing for the community. But there's only so much we as a board can do. I feel for you. As far as I'm in the same position you are. I go to work every day, work hard. We're all here together, and what I think the board has done to come up with this budget is really the best we could do for everybody and keep the town going. Take care of the town employees.
No, I don't have a problem at all with the town side of the budget. But if we have outstanding revenue that should be brought into the town, we should collect it. If it means going to auction, that's what it takes. Some of it's gonna be commercial, some might be residential. Give a pass to the elderly or whatever. But you gotta, if you have $1.2 million out there, all right, and we need 300,000, you guys shouldn't be coming to us. You should come out of the $1.2 million to collect the 300,000.
Mr. Moderator?
Yeah, Mr. Perry.
First of all, as Joe said, they worked at collecting some of this. They collected $500,000 last year. We have a new treasurer collector who's making this a project to collect this money. But it's a lot like sales in a corporation. You have sales, then you have account receivables because you haven't been paid yet. It still counts as sales. So
Yeah,
our tax levy is still the same number. And that's the piece that's short. The fact that we haven't been paid, that can impact cash flow, our ability to actually pay the bills. But if everybody paid, if we got $1.2 million tomorrow, it would not solve the budget deficit that we're looking at for next year. It's a case of which account it's put in. And so this is essentially accounts receivable that's waiting to come in.
I understand accounts receivable, accounts payable, and all that. So you're telling me if you collected enough to cover the budget so we don't have to do a tax override, none of that would be put into it, it'd be put into the free cash fund or something?
It would show up in the town's accounts, but it wouldn't account against the tax levy that's being spent or proposed to be spent for next year. I mean, I wish it was, because if it was that simple.
So what happens to that money?
When it comes in, it will show up as a cash surplus in a bank account, but it doesn't go against the money that is being proposed to be raised to fund expenses next year. It's similar to a company selling something for $1,000 and they only get paid $800. It's $200 in account receivables.
Yes, you have a loss at 20%, but it's still 800 plus, right? So you follow what I'm saying? You're still 800 ahead of the game. You were going for 1,000. You only got 800. It's still 800.
Well, town went for 25 million in tax revenues last year and collected, if it was 1 year, they collected $1.2 million less of that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't impact what we're allowed to spend against.
Well, we shouldn't be spending more than we have coming in.
Well, that is, yes, that is the $362,000 question.
Ms. King.
Good evening. Cindy King, West Townsend. I have a number of, I'm going to try to spit everything out that I have, make a number of comments, and then followed by a couple questions. First, with the moderator's permission, respond to some of the dialogue about the taxes. Usually when we have...
Excuse me, Cindy, can everybody here understand?
All right, the mask is off. How's that?
Yeah, that might
Okay,
help.
I meant to take it off, I forgot. When we have taxes that are behind, when people are behind in the real estate taxes, normally, we've had a couple of treasurer changes, so I don't know what's going on down there, but I'm sure it's going fine. But usually when there's people behind in their taxes and they're delinquent and they're going to tax levy, what happens is the treasurer, tax collector, I should say, sells the taxes to investment companies, and they purchase the loans. And the town is no longer in the business of taking people's houses away, knocking on their door, continually sending bills that don't get paid. It helps everyone when this happens. Unfortunately, the people still have to pay this bill, but the town gets the money, at least most of it, from these investment companies, and it goes into the general fund. And before we can spend any money, it has to be voted on at town meeting. So after it has to come in. The reason why we can't spend it right away is we have to have it first before we can vote on it and spend it. So having people $1 million behind in taxes, it sounds terrible. But as long as the treasurer is working on getting those things, it's a turnover, and there's every city and town goes through this. And yes, I mean, it's my concern about the people being behind in their taxes is that if we add more to the tax bill, the override, we're just going to have more people who are having difficulty paying their taxes. So that's my comment about that. The other is, I want to support the school's budget, because looking at the table, I agree with Veronica that, that 3% is, to me, it does look good. The schools generally, normally, over time, has been around 50% of our budget. That's normal for cities and towns, for the education portion of a budget to be around 50%. I've seen it at 45, and I've seen it at where it is right now. It kind of goes up and down, depending on what else is going on in town. So to see, when I look at the increases, which matters, the fact that the schools, it's $14 million, it's the biggest budget, but for any department to keep their budget down to 3%, I think is good. It's the lowest increase out of all the departments in this town. Every other budget that's being presented by the Board of Selectmen is above that, and some are over 6% increase. So we're asking, if we're asking the schools to kick in some more, then we're asking them to do something that we're not willing to do. So I don't think that the 3% is so bad. The other is, I'm hoping, all right, Article 18 is the $5,000 for, to be put in what I call the Christmas Club account for our anniversary of, what is it, the 350th, which is in 2032. Back when I was on the Board of Selectmen, someone asked and put it on the warrant to start putting $5,000 a year away into a savings account to make sure that when we have the big bash, that we have plenty of money in there. So, which I think is still a novel idea. It's a great idea to, hey, if we got $5 grand, let's throw it in a Christmas Club account and hope that, it will build over time. Well, I'm concerned about it this year. I'm not against supporting the big bash in 2032, but I think in a year that we're pushing an override, I think even though 5,000 isn't that much, I think that any money, when we're just putting it aside for a party, I think, which I know it's a big party, but just that 5,000, I don't think that it's really, we really need to cut every corner that we can to try to get that override down to zero.
Cindy, you have some other points. You made the point about...
I'm getting to my questions. I'm getting to my questions.
Well, I would like to comment on your statements.
Can I get to, I'll spit everything out?
Let's hear what you have to say, but bear in mind, it's almost 8 o'clock now. We don't want to make this a double town meeting.
I'm to my question.
So I want to try to limit people to be succinct and make your points. And
my question is, which might be rhetorical at this point, but the selectmen are asking for an override. It's on the election, and from watching selectmen's meetings and finance committee meetings, I've understood that the plan B is to take it out of stabilization. If the townspeople vote no on the override, your plan B is to take it out of stabilization. I want to possibly rhetorically, but if you can answer it, do you have plan C? Because if we vote down no to the override, and then on the town meeting floor vote no to taking it from stabilization, what are you ready to do? Because you'll have to do the budget on town meeting floor in order for us to close town meeting. The budget has to be balanced when we leave that night, or the next night, or the next night. And then my next question is ARPA money. This town has been receiving quite a bit of money from the federal government, COVID money from who knows where that's coming from. But it's gone, we've spent a lot of money that doesn't have to be accounted for through town meeting vote. But I'd like to know how much you've received and what you've spent it on and what you're planning on spending it on in fiscal year '23. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, so I'm going to start and go backwards.
You got those questions? You got?
Well, I'm going backwards.
Okay,
I
going
think I've got
backwards, okay.
3. There might have been 4.
Okay, all right.
On the ARPA money, if you go to the town website, there's a tab that says Town Projects. If you click on it, you will see exactly how much ARPA money we got, and you will see exactly where it is going. The ARPA fund money has to be spent in particular ways. It's not just a free-for-all, use it for whatever you want. So if you look on the town website under Town Projects, you will see that. Moving back, and again, I can't remember all of them, but I want to say the 3% on education, you say, that's not so bad. Keep in mind that just with that 3%, unless each of these is 1.75, we are looking at an override anyway, because 3% is too much of over 60% of the budget. That number needs to be below 2.5. And then you could argue that, well, maybe we could cut here and there. There was one other. Maybe 2 others.
I think maybe the question about the money for the 300.
Oh, the 3,000 and the 5,000 for the 300th anniversary. That is coming from free cash. So the money that we were talking about, last year we had a tax title sale, as Joe said. That money went into free cash. That's why we had $900,000 in free cash at the special town meeting, more than that, actually, was because of that tax title sale. But free cash is not part of the monies that you can budget, and these are rules that the state sets. So those 3 articles that we looked at first, snow and ice at almost $200,000, 50K, the Unitil bill, that is coming out of free cash, as is the 5,000. It is not coming out of the operating budget for the year. So it's not stopping, it's not changing these percentages that you see here on this article. So I saw other people with hands up.
I know, Joe, you. Chaz.
I would like to just say a couple of things on this. Number one, I think the education ask is way out of line, and I am certainly not for that at all. There are many things that can be done with a budget, especially of that size. If you look at what the budget that they've published, having a salary for an assistant facilities for $87,000 to me is completely out of line. Last year when we first voted against a revolving fund that then was revoted for, the question was posed, then next year you're going to come back to the town and ask to fund that. Well, there's $100,000 that's going in that fund that they said they were not going to ask for funding. So I believe, and I agree with you, sir, that the ask for the school right now is way out of line. Are there other options available to us? Yes, there is. We have looked in them. Like I had said in my opening statement, that we did send a letter to the school district saying how much we're not in line with what they are proposing for their budget, but they still propose the same budget. I believe that we all, I too feel that an override is going to be a hardship on myself and my family. So I believe that we need to really figure out how we're going to hammer this out. you know, part of it is that school budget, because the 3% that's represented here is really not even close to the amount of money that they should be able to cut out of their budget. Sorry, Joe.
No problem. Mr. Moderator? I'd like to just answer the question. I think Cindy asked the question, what is the board going to do to try to make this better? Well, Cindy, my simple answer to you is, this board is not going to give golden parachutes to employees that are costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I'm not sure if anybody, and I want to let you talk, Lisa, but did anybody reply to Cindy's question about what's Plan B, what's Plan C, or did I miss that? If the override passes, because I'm interested, if the override is defeated, the plan is to take it from free cash or stabilization?
Correct.
Stabilization.
And that will
And if it
require a
doesn't
vote
pass,
at town meeting?
2/3, yeah, and if that doesn't pass,
We have to rework the budget. Is that probably,
well,
what we have to do?
there are some options,
Okay.
but all of them involve, you know, we can take a couple positions and fund them through ARPA that are currently funded through the operating budget. Basically, public safety, because we have to follow the guidelines for the federal funds that we were given. And it means that for those positions will be funded for a year with ARPA funds, and we are right back where we are next year, or we lay those people off. The same goes for, I mean, if you look through the budget, you'll look and see that this is not wildly inappropriate. We will cut all the extra hours, so no, highway admin will not go to 19 hours from 10. No, the accounting clerk will not go to 19 hours from 10. We were doing the things, this town has been short-staffed for years, and we were hoping that we would have people able to do their jobs as they should be done, to do the best that they can for our community. And to do that, you need to have the hours. You have to have the hours for the people that work for the town, and you need to pay them fairly. So we do, you know, Plan C will happen. It will have to, but it won't put us in a different position for next year. We will be right back here looking at the same sort of funding, unless we can look at, I'm running my cursor here and only the people at home can see, unless we're looking at education. And I do want to say that I put on the red banner on the website, if you click on that, you can see I put the detailed North Middlesex budget up there. And I also put up the Neshoba Valley Technical High School, because we have 2 school districts that we're working with. So Neshoba Valley's budget book is up there. You have to scroll all the way to the end to see their budget. But those are there. You can look at where the increases are for this 3%. And it is huge. I know you look at it and say, oh, look, it's so low. The other thing we could do is, okay, right here, solid waste. That's double what we're asking for. This is trash pickup. And I know I've lived in this town since 1985, so I know the trash pickup is a hot topic. And any time it's been like, no, you have to pay, you know, privately for your trash pickup. No, 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 we want this. But it is a huge piece of our budget. And it more than doubles the override.
I just want to add to that, we have been in communication and had meetings with selectmen and the finance committees from the 2 other communities that are in our regional school district. And we are not alone in feeling and thinking the way that we are thinking. There is no revenue source outside of our town that really funds the school. there are other options available to those schools, and that is something that the selectmen of all three towns have been talking about, that they need to be a little more proactive in trying to gaining those. That's thought number one. Number two is, if you look at just the transportation budget alone, it's $4 million, and of that money, it's coming from one company. It's only one bid, and the bid was accepted once it came in. That I'm sure could be negotiated down at some point, because it's only one company, which is, in my mind, $4 million for transportation for these three towns is way out of whack as far as that's concerned. But I believe as a community, and my biggest point here is that we need to be collaborating with the other two towns in regards to the schools, to be able to really put something a little more palatable for all of us.
Okay, I just want to ask if the FinCom has any question or any comments at this point of the discussion.
Nothing substantial to add. We were talking about looking at Plan C starting next week at our next meeting to see if there are any options, what's available to us.
Okay.
As far as that goes. As far as the schools, what we have been presented, my understanding was their E&D line took down the assessment that we had a little bit, in hopes that the state was going to fund them more for transportation. If that funding doesn't come through, then the schools will probably come back looking for more in there. So we have to, everything is a balancing act with every piece of this budget. It's kind of like the seesaw teeters every time you move just a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lisa, for waiting patiently. What's your question or comment?
Lisa Lewin from West Townsend. I have a question. So last year at town meeting, the town voted down, was it the revolving fund for the schools? Or was it like a slush fund, or?
The stabilization fund, I thought it was, for the schools.
It was the fund that, it was E&D, I think, right? It was the, when we have an allocation that goes to the school and they don't use all of that funding, that money traditionally comes back to the town, but that vote allowed them to put that into a revolving fund so that they could use that for
Okay,
their
and then they're
budgets.
asking for another 100,000 in addition to that? Doesn't that fund have like over $1 million in it?
That's the E&D. And they did, I believe, Ross, you can tell me if I'm right on this, they did, when all the towns pushed back on the budget, they did take more out of E&D. They did make that concession, because this 3% was higher when the budget was originally coming in, and Ross was saying we're 800,000 off, but you can talk more.
So how much is in their fund?
The school's E&D, as certified by the state, is $3,704,000.
So I say vote down the school budget.
They are suggested or required to keep 5% of their budget, which would translate to $2,052,000. So according to the DLR, they have $752,000 in surplus E&D, which is the school's E&D is similar to the town's free cash. It's money that wasn't spent out of their budget. I hope that when the state finishes its budget and we get final numbers, there's been talk about the state will fund transportation at a higher percentage than they have currently, that any increase in Chapter 70 or transportation funds that go to the school go immediately back to the town as a reduced assessment. That's good news if that happens, and somewhat bad news is we won't know about that until after town meeting, probably not until after the beginning of July.
So how can they use the E&D fund, and what does it stand for?
Excess and deficiency.
Okay.
So
Like
it's
free cash.
So they can use it however they choose to use it. Even though we gave them a certain amount for a budget, they didn't use it all, so our money goes back into a fund, they can use it for anything.
Sort of, yes.
Not exactly.
Well, I'm talking simple terms. I think that this budget is way out of control.
So we hope that the school will understand that if they get extra money from the state this summer, when the state's budget is finalized, that they use that to reduce the town's
But that's
assessment.
not going to make a difference when we go to vote.
No.
So we won't know that.
Correct. Correct. Somebody asked about Plan B and C. One option is to leave town meeting with an unbalanced budget, not preferable, not recommended, but it can be done and is legal. Come back to a town meeting in the fall and hope that we know our revenues better. I mean, one reason the deficit's been coming down the last 2 months is we've been analyzing the revenue as well as analyzing the expenses. But you're only allowed to allocate at town meeting monies that are actually in there. So like ambulance receipts.
Right.
You can't estimate what will be there June 30th and vote it. You have to estimate it. It has to be actual for
that
in this
date.
case, April 30th. So in the fall, we will know our revenues better, such as ambulance receipts. We will know better what our local receipts will be for permitting and fees and licenses. We will know better what the cherry sheet is from the state. Potentially, we'll know what the school budget is and a reduced assessment. So the budget might get better in the fall, and if that's a big might.
I was going to say, that's a...
Yeah, you don't know.
And if it's not better, then you could try the 2.5 override again, try the stabilization transfer
So what
again.
happens if we vote down the budget at town meeting, the school budget, and say, no, we're not going to accept this?
It takes 2 of the 3 towns to vote down the school
Right,
budget.
say 2 of us voted down.
Then the school has, it's either 30 or 45 days to come back with another budget number.
30.
30 days. It could be lower by a significant amount. It could be lower by $1. It could be the same. It's up for
And
the
then
school.
we would would that happen at special town meeting in the fall, or would we call a special meeting?
There would be a special town meeting to approve that new number.
Right, but would it coincide with would we do it that quickly? So, because if it's voted down again and they go back again, then what happens?
I think there's some sort of time limit, I'm not sure exactly what it is, that the towns have to vote on that amended budget.
Okay,
I'm not sure if it's 30, 60, or 90 days.
okay. I'm just curious, I mean, I can hold out as long as they can, so I'm just wondering, who's going to cry uncle and actually... Sorry.
Well, with the meetings that we have had, the other 2 towns are talking the same conversation right now.
Right.
I know that we've extended, collaboration as far as that's concerned. There's a lot of different options that are available, and I'd like to see the education, I'd like to see the school district come to the table. We invited them tonight, and they didn't show up to answer their budget, so.
So can you tell me, I don't know if you can here, but if it's written in the budget, what the superintendent makes?
I don't have that information.
That's not,
You can go to the website and you can see that. It's like 344,000.
yeah.
That is all. You're right.
Okay, thank you.
If I remember right, that is roughly the amount. I looked at that this morning. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to call on Todd Melanson to come up and talk about the water articles that are on here. Around 20? 10, Article 10. 10 and 11 are the water articles. All of this is on the website, so if you don't have a hard copy, you can go to the website where we put up the announcement about today in news. You can find all the budgets there. And I did put up the school details so you can see how much administration makes, if you are so inclined to look at that. And it's also on the red alert, but the red alert will probably come down in the next, well, it's for tonight, so. All right, so where are we at? Article 8.
Article 10 and 11.
All right, thank you. So Todd.
My name's Todd Melanson. I've lived here since 2000, Clement Road. I'm chairman of the Board of Water Commissioners. Like many communities, I would say throughout Massachusetts, New England, and the country, and wherever else you want to go, PFAS has become an issue. PFAS are polyfluorinated compounds. They are a newly regulated compound by DEP, most other states. Massachusetts probably has some of the stricter limits in the country. This isn't anybody's fault. Well, if you want to put it, there's two villains, DuPont and 3M. We are complicit. Everything you use in your house that has made your life easier, water resistant, stain resistant, fire resistant, non-stick, Teflon, tape, dental floss, they're all PFAS. Microwave popcorn. I take the samples for the utility that I work in so that I don't contaminate the samples when I take them. I cannot use personal care products. No soap, no shampoo, no shaving cream. Well, I don't need shampoo. I can't wear my normal work attire. I'm afraid I might contaminate the sample. Everything we use, majority of the things we use have it in it. So although we were uneducated in its uses and its what's happened, 3M and DuPont knew about it. We have to fix it. Harbor Trace has been off since August, so your water's safe. We have tried to do the regular maintenance and operations and bringing 2 wells online. We brought Cross Street back online. You have a brand new Main Street well. The tubular well field is going to go offline, and the new gravel pack well, which will be able, a better supply and better quality will go on. We did that with all the money we had in-house. The latest test results for Harbor Trace, we turn it on, pump it for a while, and they test it. They have to do that monthly. That latest result came in at 120 parts per trillion.
Excuse me, Todd, would it be easier for you to come up here and speak to the group?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It was Ronnie's idea.
Then you're facing everybody.
Let's have a seat.
So that everybody knows, Harbor Trace was offline. We pumped it, we tested it. It's 120. The mass contamination limit that DEP set is 20. Our highest level ran anywhere from 65. 65 was probably about the average. We had one high of 96. It means the contamination is getting worse. Also, the system with what we've got set up barely meets our capacity. It's why there's been so much discoloration. The system is pulling against each other because it's coming from different areas at different times. The treatment plant is a way to solve that. It will treat the water at Witches Brook 1 and 2 in Harbor Trace. It will bring the PFAS down to non-detect. It will give us sufficient capacity to maintain our residential usage, our fire protection, our commercial, and allow us to take wells offline to do our regular maintenance. Water isn't something that you can sit and let go. We've done a lot of things that for whatever reason, needed to be done and hadn't been in a while. And I'm not going back, and I don't care what happened in the past. I've always been about fixing it. I'm Army and Scottish. I don't really care about the past. I just want to get it fixed. My concern with the latest number is that it means the contamination is getting worse. Harbor Trace will pull it in and treat it. We'll take care of Witches Brook 1 and 2. The general consensus from the Bureau of Wayside cleanup, contamination is coming from septic systems. Not a industrial dump, not somebody didn't dump this or bury a barrel. There's been no record of fire, the fire foam usage. So it's on us, unfortunately. The 14.9 will get us our plant. What you have to understand about this, is the 14.9 will allow us to finalize the application with the state revolving fund. That is how the money that for PFAS remediation is going through. Any money that comes in from the infrastructure finance bill will go through SRF. This is 0% interest and at a minimum 13% principal forgiveness. Means we have to bond the whole thing out, but we will not pay interest on it, and at a minimum, we won't have to pay 13% of it back. Now, the other thing you have to understand about this comes out of the water enterprise account. The money that you pay for your water usage is what pays those sort of things. This has nothing to do with your tax rate, an override, or anything. This is why there is a water enterprise account. Water enterprise accounts are set up so no matter the fiscal situation of the town, the water department is financially stable and can do its job to provide you drinking water that is safe and in sufficient quantity, and give you fire protection. This didn't come as a choice lightly put forth by the board. Our budget has been set up so we can do the treatment plant, operate it, and do our regular maintenance and operations. To turn this down, SRF, the way they look at things, and we're already been approved for it, okay? We have to finalize it for the bond come October.
It has to be voted for the town meeting by 30 June 2020.
All right, so this has to be finalized by June 30th. So our annual town meeting is our best shot to do that. If you turn it down, it's very hard to go back if you've had a community that's already turned down SRF to put you at the head of the list. And I'm going to be honest with you, we are at the head of the list. That's why we tested early. That's why we've been doing as much as we have. There are now 65 communities that have issues with PFAS. They're all going to be looking for money. We are at the head of the list. I'd like us to stay there and be able to do what we need to do to protect the community, both from a public health and, being involved with water as long as I understand the economic impact of having a municipal water supply and what that allows you to do and what you potentially lose if you can't. So I would ask for your support on both the water budget and the bond, the 14.9 bond for the treatment plant. We've done and scraped every nickel we can out of the budget, taken as much out of our reserves as it's even below where we're supposed to be, because we were trying to get things done this year to maintain the system. So I ask for the community's support. You guys know I know a lot of, I'm known as the water guy or whatever, but I really and truly, we have worked diligently to get this done. And I really and truly hope the community supports it come annual town meeting, and I'll answer any questions you got.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Melanson? No, I don't see any, but Todd, I'm not going to let you get off that easy. Yes. I got one.
Good enough.
Have you a sense of what this impact would be for the ratepayers?
The rates are already set up that way. That's why first things first, we set up a tiered rate system. SRF likes to see that the tiered system, because it does generate a certain amount of water conservation and shows you're fiscally responsible with your funding. The other part of it is there were rate increases, and so that is built into the rates that we passed.
Okay.
And again, we didn't take that lightly. So that you understand, most rates are just a single set of tiers. We knew the impact businesses are facing, so we capped those so we didn't push businesses. The larger water users, such as the apartment buildings. We also capped the schools. Now, that may not be a popular decision, but if we don't, all they're going to do is add it to their budget and the tax rate gets affected. So we tried to balance as much, and there was a lot of thought process put into it. We had a third-party company come in and do the rate analysis to show where we were with the single block, where we would end up. We were heading towards insolvency of the enterprise account. So the rate is set up to support the beginning stages of the treatment plant and things like that. A lot of the stuff we don't know until the plant gets up and running.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I just want to note, put it here, that if you want to see the presentation by the company that did the water rate survey on March 1st, I believe it was, they presented to the Board of Selectmen. So if you go on the YouTube channel to March 1st, you can see the water rate presentation, and you can see how over time it's spread out over like 20 years or so? 10 years?
10 years.
10 years.
10 years, it's spread out, and you can see how it will affect the rate. It's actually a pretty good plan. So not that hard on the budget.
The other part on that too is a lot of it will be dependent upon what we end up as a final number for the debt. If the water infrastructure bill comes in, they are talking about significant increases in the principal forgiveness. I want to say it's 52 communities in the state of Massachusetts right now, and that number is getting added, have joined a class action lawsuit. From my understanding, because the utility I work for, we also did, we were one of the first, I think the first 8 complainants. They're seeing the numbers add up, and they are talking, no one knows when a settlement would or could be reached, but DuPont and 3M have come to some sort of conclusion. You look at St. Gobans in New Hampshire, they've already come to settlements with the state on their contamination in Merrimack and Manchester. So there are other options. So it's set up as a worst case scenario, okay? But nothing is done to be exorbitant or anything like that. It set us up to be a modern system and run a sustainable system. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't mind doing the hard work. I don't mind hard fights. And this was one of them. And so I just ask for the community support when it comes to that. And I appreciate your time. And seriously, if anyone has a question, send it to the water department and I will answer it to the best of my ability. The other thing is I did ask Dave tonight, you're better off going to the YouTube video because the gentleman who did who works with Ty and Bond, who did the rate study, and I'll let you know, they're an environmental engineering firm and they're known for their rate studies. I think we had 3 to 4 companies, but Ty and Bond far outperformed the others. He explains it, but I did ask Dave to be able to, he's gonna try and get a copy of the PowerPoint that they had. Now, it won't have his explanation on it and what it means for an individual and stuff like that, but he does have the PowerPoint, and I asked him to get a copy of it and put it up on the website as well. So, that being said, I'll reiterate, please support the water budget and the treatment plant. Otherwise, we face significant issues. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ty. Okay, what's next?
So those are the,
Microphone.
pardon me?
Microphone.
Sorry. Are there any other budget-related questions? We could go and look at the capital finance articles, or questions on any of the non-budget articles that are on here. There are, towards the end, there are other articles that are not necessarily budget articles.
Well, if I might, I have a question, I guess. If you could, how do the capital planning articles for, the recommendations of the capital planning committee, how does that interface with the overall budget? Is that part of the override that we're talking about? Okay.
No. You want to talk, Ross?
Yes, thank you. Article 12, the articles are funded either out of free cash or the water enterprise, so those would be a simple majority vote. And Article 11 are items that would be borrowed, and those would require a 2/3 majority vote. But none of those voted up or down will impact the operating budget that we're talking about.
It's where the town is borrowing, voting to borrow, right? On those articles?
In Article 11, there's a total of $1,060,000 that the town will be asked to borrow.
On Article 13?
13.
Correct.
For the capital planning? And
Yes, 13.
And Article 12 is for other departments other than the fire department, EMS, fire, EMS, highway, police, and conservation. So that one is to vote and raise or borrow. Do we know what the plan is? Is that to borrow on that one, too?
Article 12 will be moved to fund those all, 12.1 through 12.5 will be funded, 12.6.
Oh, I see,
from
free cash. Yep.
Article 8 is actually already in the operating budget.
Right.
So they don't need to vote that because that will be approved in the
We're
operating
obligated.
budget.
Yeah.
And then Article 9 is free cash, and then Article 10, 11, and 12 will be from water retained earnings.
Okay, all right, thanks, Ross.
But,
And then Article 13 is a borrowing article.
yes,
Okay.
but up or down, none of these individual items, capital items, will impact the operating budget
Or the override issue.
or the override.
Okay,
So,
okay. Thank you.
and we cut out probably $100,000 of capital items, just trying to preserve some free cash at the end of the day. That'll be used for something that comes up in the fall, if it should, but we sort of want to keep something in the bank
Okay.
accounts.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, any questions on the non-budget articles from the town meeting? Any questions generally about town meeting?
We have some old, we could talk about that, I guess.
Any
Article 15.
summation by the selectmen or the FinCom?
Say that again?
You want to sum up, or,
Well, I guess we could, or do we want to go through more articles, or are we pretty well set?
well, it seems like people are satisfied on the I think most of them, many of them are fairly standard, but, if anybody wants to raise a question, Ross?
I'm going to take a chance to comment on Article 15. This actually, we're putting money back into an account. This is a collection of 5 warrant articles from previous town meetings where they did not spend the full appropriated amount. So instead of spending every last penny, through good management, they spent less, and now what we're doing is we're recapturing that money and putting it back into capital stabilization for use at a future time. So this is actually putting money back into a savings account versus letting it hang around and be tied up in old accounts that aren't going to be used. So there's a little bit of forward planning going on in this.
That's good.
And I just want to add, we didn't, for all those capital articles, we didn't take anything out of the capital stabilization fund to pay for the capital articles because we are a little flush this year in free cash. So we used free cash instead of capital stabilization, which will leave us with more capital. Where are we at? About 102 or so?
Right now, the current balance in capital stabilization is $103,276. We're putting $41,664 back in. So at the end of town meeting, instead of decreasing the account, it will be up to $144,940. So a little bit of room for next year's projects.
Right. Over the years, capital stabilization has decreased and decreased and decreased. So the decision was made to use free cash and try to build that back up. So it really is a rebuilding year. So I guess all I would say is we really would appreciate the support on the override, and come to town meeting, go to vote on Monday, come to town meeting on May 3rd, and, you know, we'll make it through. It's all good.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I would like to thank Todd Melanson for coming in and explaining the water department. I also want to thank Carol Hofstas for coming in from the planning board to answer any questions if any come up, but you lucked out this time. So next time we hope to hear from you. And also Dave from the water department as well, the water superintendent, in case we had any questions in regards to that. But thank you very much for everybody to show up tonight, for your interest.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have
Thank
a
you,
good
everyone, for
evening.
coming out.
And with that, we need to adjourn our Board of Selectmen meeting. So is there a motion?
Should. Finance Committee.
They did call the roll.
That's right.
They were number 4.
Madam Chair, I move that we close the public meeting.
All those in favor?
Chad Sexton Duranian, yes?
And Veronica Cal, yes. Thank you.